It's time for this week's PrairieCast.
This week's PrairieCast is brought to you by Delta Dental of Iowa, who reminds you that you don't have to work for a big company to get big benefits. Delta Dental offers a dental plan to fit your needs, whether it is a single policy, one for your family, or one for the team at your startup. Visit deltadentalia.com to learn more about your many plan options. Hi there, and welcome to episode 71 of PrairieCast for January 24th, 2012. I'm Jeff Wood of Silicon Prairie News, and our panel today includes Jordan Lampe, Communications Director at Dwolla. Jordan, how are you today?
Good.
Nice quiet weekend? Sleepy Friday for you?
A little bit.
Yeah, I thought so. Great time to have you on the show this week, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Our other guest today is a first-timer, Sayer Martin from Sagacious, Inc. Did I say that right?
You did?
First time on the show, but you've been watching us for a while, and you've been
Quite
around
a
the
while.
startup community. So
Yeah, I have, and I've got to say I'm a little bit intimidated by the star power on this panel today.
It's pretty good.
The lights are hot, and so are the,
Lights are
the
very
stars
hot.
here. So
that's how you know that it's a real time, like a real big show if you have hot lights, because people always complain about that on national TV.
yeah, I had to take off my coat because I'm sweating a little bit. Glad that doesn't come through over the video.
And we should say that you are one of our office mates here at the Silicon Prairie
I
News
am,
office.
yeah.
So usually you sit and watch us record
That's right.
this.
Where that camera sits every day is what I see every day. So I'm always looking at the set.
Yeah.
Which is, I never come over here, though. I've never really come over here.
It's an open conference table, offline. And then, of course, Andy Broodkol, 48 Web, our co-host today. Andy, anything new with you this week?
Not a whole lot. We got some new stuff on the show, though, so pretty excited about that.
We do, actually. We're adding 2 new segments today, which is kind of fun. So every week after the show, when we review, we kind of come up with different ideas on things we can do, and other folks give us ideas too. So we're always open to hear that. But excited for 2 of them this week, but we'll do that after kind of the main stories of the week. And those 2 main stories of the week, let's go ahead and get started with those. First one is this past Wednesday was the SOPA Blackout Day. I think some people called it American Censorship Day, things like that. Websites around the region, around the country, around the world went dark for 24 hours, including, for sure, Wikipedia, I think Reddit, several others, protesting legislation that was moving through the House and the Senate to really change how we do anti-piracy law. Legislation was backed by lobbying interests from those with major copyrights, places like the Motion Picture Association or Motion Picture Association of America. Thought this was a way to protect their online property. People that ran the websites that were going to be affected said, probably not. That's going to break the internet. Let's see what we can do to galvanize, I guess, the world against this. And for the most part, it was successful because that legislation has been derailed. My question for all of you is, for one, what did you think of it? And 2, do you think this is the sign of kind of a new generation moving forward? Or is this going to happen with legislation more often now?
Well, it's kind of interesting because from a mainstream perspective, I don't think something so controversial that started essentially online ever really reached it to mainstream programming. I mean, you had Today's Show talking about it, you had CNN talking about it, and I think that movement is something that potentially could happen. I mean, we've gone through things like Patriot Act where people get really upset about pieces of legislation that go through in the past, but I don't think we've ever seen such a wholehearted, this is messed up kind of response, and I don't think anyone was planning on it.
Well, I think that's because it's not really a partisan issue. It's like nobody wants this, so the masses are able to kind of get together and complain about it, whereas if it's a partisan issue, there's so much fighting at the lower levels that it can never reach that size of
and you have everybody in the middle that just hates the process
right.
on partisan issues that just doesn't want to deal with it.
Of course, then you have behemoths involved. You have Google involved, who interacts with how many billions of people a day, and they put the little black bar on their logo, and people say, "What's this?"
Right.
Oh, this is going to shut down the internet, and they don't look into it and research it anymore, and pretty soon everybody's blowing up with their opinion, even if they don't know the specifics of the bills.
Yeah, one in each house. So do you think that we'll do this again? Like, obviously it stopped. I mean, I was reading up on this today because it changed so fast. When I first kind of set this topic out, it's changed 4 times since then. But basically, it's effectively dead. It's not completely dead. Like, it could still come back and it's been delayed.
And it will.
But I think it was Lamar Smith said it's effectively dead in its current form. Does that mean this was successful? I mean, is this a...
I don't think it will really be successful yet. there was a blog by Maddox that was posted, and I came across it, I think, on Reddit one night after work, and it essentially said, I hope SOPA passes, because I think we kind of deserve it. The fact of the matter is that we let these people, so-called congressmen, represent us, and then allow them to be persuaded by special interests, and to still think that they represent our interest is foolish.
So it was just kind of saying our whole process of governance is wrong. So
and that's taking a step back and looking at maybe all three branches and ask, we should be having the conversation, is this still working for us? I mean, is this when everybody wrote the Constitution, did people sit back and think about, what's going to be the implications of Twitter on the democratic processes in the Middle East? And it's doubtful. I'm all for having some simple contained consistent structure of government, but at the same time we really have to start asking ourselves, what is the best way to rule ourselves in the 21st century? And I think this case, if anything, threatened to take away one of the greatest tools we've ever come across, and really highlighted how much is actually wrong with the current process.
Interesting viewpoint for sure. Did Dwolla do anything related to SOPA?
We did. We wrote up just kind of a quick blog that, from our standpoint, there are financial implications for us, but it was more of a philosophical issue as well. We consider what we do a byproduct of the internet, and what the internet has allowed us to do. It at that point was being threatened, and what we could do was being threatened. And so we really took a high-level stance on it.
Financial implications, because under what I understand, you guys couldn't transfer money for certain people in violation of this law. Like, you'd have to change how you govern your users differently. And
well, it's not even so much that. It's this idea of, let's say, hypothetically, you took a screenshot of a movie and put it to a poster, and then did your own kind of characteristics and likeness, and were selling that without any sort of causation, as I understand it. Somebody could come in and say, take that down. You cannot facilitate money transfers to this person. So, of course, when you start extrapolating it from there, it can get even more, conspiratory, if you will. But I mean, that's just one example of how I understand it would affect us. Interesting.
Did you personally contact any congressmen from the philosophical, like, you guys put a note out, right, that said this is the blog post, but did you personally, did you act on this?
We did I think the form letters and the things like that a lot of the community was already doing. In terms of written letters, Torsion Mobile, Christian Gurney, I know we were talking, he had written a very passionate letter. And he was talking about, unfortunately, the only response he got from one of the representatives was somebody that wasn't even in his district. So, and he wrote that a long time ago.
Yeah.
So
there were, I think, one estimate I saw, 7,000 websites that went black on last Wednesday. 20 or so of those were local companies. You did that with your companies, right? Startup City did that.
Yep.
What sort of impact did that have on the business, do you think? I mean, you guys obviously want to continue to transmit money. I understand that. Yeah. We did not go black. We had a somewhat annoying, like, interstitial thing talking about it. That is a very good word.
It is.
I think Google, like you talked about, they blacked out their logo. So they still allowed, like, commerce to commence, still allowed the news to come out. And I think you need some people to do that to still get the word on what's going on that day. And
people were given, like, Dick Costello and Twitter crap because they weren't doing it. But I loved his response of, we're a global company. We can't just black out our website because one country of our entire population of users has a problem.
But with that said, Wikipedia only blacked out the English, right?
They did.
I believe so, right.
It's one. It's and it's one thing to kind of sit back and say, well, we're involved without being involved. But at the same time, it kind of also speaks to the point that it's such an important aspect of our lives. Certain things need to be up and running.
I was surprised Pinterest didn't. I checked them on the day, and they didn't do anything.
They didn't do anything.
And if anything, them and Tumblr are probably going to be hurt the worst if any of this passes. And they didn't do anything. And they have such a different audience than, like, some of the sites that we look at, that it would have been, I think, had a huge impact. But nothing on there.
That's a great point, because with Pinterest, you're repinning something that's most likely copyrighted, through the course of this. So that would Tumblr has done a ton with this, but Pinterest hasn't done anything. That's a very I had not thought about that point.
Yeah, the thing that I took away from it was really how uninformed I think lawmakers are. I mean, I didn't look at it necessarily deeper into, what does it say about our democratic process? But it really does say that a lot of these guys are remarkably uninformed. I mean, they said after they were.
Are you talking about the congressman?
The congressman.
Yeah.
I mean, you had in one of the articles I read, 7 of the original sponsors backed out, and then were tweeting out about how this is gonna be horrible for commerce after sponsoring the bill.
Right. Didn't you
being
read
one
it?
of 34 people, and it tells you that they were definitely beholden to the special interests, the MPAA and what RIAA. Right.
Yeah.
It brings up a good question of what else aren't they reading that gets passed into law.
Well,
Right.
Well, do you
And
remember
remember
the
the stimulus package, right? 2,000 pages, and
at this point,
they voted
though,
on it in overnight.
Special interests are, offering their services to write the bills and stuff
Right.
as it is. And the
And
amount of money
special
they've
interests
poured
are fighting it too, right? I mean, Google
Yeah.
put a lot of money into fighting SOPA as well. So I mean, you have both sides represented on this.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
As we're talking about the congressman, well, first you talked about them not understanding it. Wasn't that Steve King from Iowa that had tweeted, like, while it was being debated on the floor, he's like, I'm so bored with this conversation,
Yeah.
I'm just going to go surf the internet. He's somebody who has not taken a stance on this, obviously. I mean,
Well, it's just kind of interesting to me because the Republican Party's relationship with this seems to be like this. If anything, this would be more government, and there were a lot of co-sponsors that were both. That I found fascinating.
But I feel like what I've read, I don't have this statistic in front of me, is that more Republicans kind of flipped against this on the blackout day once they started talking about this as a bailout of Hollywood.
and innovation
Yeah.
stifler,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah. So a couple stats. Danny, I almost said Danny Way, which is a Twitter handle. Danny Schreiber from our team put together. He went through Politico.com and looked at all of the local Silicon Prairie congressmen in both houses and looked at what they were doing. And in Iowa, 3 of the 7 representatives and senators have opposed it. None have said they support it, but 4 have said they have no stance, or at least their position is not known at this
Well,
point.
that goes back to what Sayer said. I don't really. I read a quote somewhere online. It was like, "Okay, Congress, it's not okay to not understand how the internet works." A lot of these people.
It's a series of tubes.
Yeah. Yeah. I click buttons and hamsters go on the other side and make funny
Yeah.
videos. So the thing about it, though, is that it's an indication of how out of touch people are. They are saying, well, we didn't understand the implications. Oh, that's because about 5 or 6, 7 years ago, you still thought the internet was a fad.
Or
Yeah.
it was
You know,
just
you
AOL.
don't. I forget what senator came out and got a
I
bunch
think
of
it
slack
still
just a
is.
couple of years ago saying that I don't use email.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that people are trying to write bills they just don't quite understand or grasp yet.
Well, and that goes to the earlier point of what else is there that they don't understand that is being governed by a similar group. When you look at so 3 of 7 in Iowa opposed it. Everyone in Kansas has publicly said they oppose it. Missouri, 3 of 8 opposed. Nebraska, 3 of 5. So I mean, there's still a lot of wiggle room for ones that are unknown. Governor Vilsack is who said that? Okay. That got in trouble for that. Producer John is telling us. So through the magic of the internet or the whiteboard on the other side of the office.
Or
we
the
get
series of
notes.
tubes.
Yeah. No, so I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is there are still a lot of local representatives that don't have an opinion one way or the other that could be for this before it actually gets, finally decided. So it's not a dead issue, I guess is what I'm trying
Right,
to
I was
say.
going to say, that is the counterpoint here. There is a online privacy problem there somewhere, right? That sites are able to get content that they don't pay for and redistribute it or whatever without the permission of the owner. And sort of the recourse is take it down if you're not if the owner doesn't want you to use it.
Well,
I don't know how deep that is necessarily. It's probably worse on foreign sites, which is part of the aim of these bills.
Yeah.
So the issue is still there.
but that, if anything, demonstrated just how little people in Congress knew about how
Absolutely,
that stuff works.
absolutely. I mean,
DNS and
in kind of preparing for the show, reading through the specifics of those bills, it's almost laughable some of the stuff they expected companies to do. In order to monitor this and take it down proactively, it just for a company like Google to do that.
Yeah, I wonder how much they spend on just to do YouTube moderation.
Absolutely,
and that's the thing is, it shows how out of touch some of these industry players really are. One of the other quotes in that Max's blog post was, you can't outlaw the internet just because it breaks your business model. You know, we all understand that we live in essentially tumultuous times in the economy, not just the recession and things like that, but everything's changing in such a quick way. This was, like, I think, an example of an antiquated industry trying to reach out and try to control something they just couldn't do.
Well, they've been trying to do that for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, since the Napster days and all of that.
And even before that with VHS.
Yeah, and that's true. So, all right, I mean, I think that it sounds like that's kind of all of the same opinion on this one. Now, the president, I believe, is going to speak tonight, right? State of the Union address is tonight. I haven't seen that this is mentioned anywhere in there. It's really still jobs. It's kind of the campaign version of the State of the Union. Does that surprise you that with the way the internet kind of responded this last week that the White House is not?
No, I guarantee you he'll mention something about it. I'll put my neck out there right now. But in terms of jobs, one of the arguments you keep on hearing is how many jobs has the entertainment industry provided,
as opposed to the
internet
industry. Yeah.
So I mean, it comes back to small businesses being able to come up with unique, innovative ideas that you and I as consumers want to interact with or buy, and this plays into that. And Pinterest is a good example. How are some of these companies that we use to communicate going to be able to monetize if something like this were to be pushed through? And let's not get it twisted. Something is going to come down the pipeline. Who's going to be involved in that conversation and creating that legislation is what I'm worried and excited about. What's going to be fair? What's going to be a policy that scales with the internet? And that's almost an impossible question to answer. But I think we just need to be able to protect our interests, come up with free market ideas. They say that piracy is a service issue. I think Newell said that. And let the market kind of rectify its course. Let the movie industry find a new way to tackle these sort of issues. But is there a piece of legislation that we need to put in there to protect intellectual property?
Well, and as Brad Dwyer says in the chat room, isn't that what the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is about? Don't we already have the laws on the books that govern this? It's more how we enforce those, the laws that already exist, as opposed to creating new laws. I think there's a school of thought around that of this whole. We have anti-piracy legislation or anti-piracy law. Now we need to enforce that, and maybe that's what some of was it Mega Upload? Is that the site that obviously law enforcement has the ability to take offending sites down. They did that dramatically this past weekend. Do we need to change for that? Different question though. It comes from Danny in the chat room, which I think is good. Has Dwolla actually been asked to take ever to cut off services to an offending party? Like, have you ever had law enforcement or somebody come to you and say you should not transmit money for them?
Honestly, I don't know. We're really proactive in identifying those kind of things. Whether or not an external third party has came in, I'm not sure. I wouldn't know.
Do you guys have a stance on that as a company, like what you would do if the government asked you to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we operate inside a very small, very defined sandbox, and although we're trying to kind of disrupt it a little bit, a lot of these legislations, a lot of these things that are out there to protect consumers. And in the case of something like that, then yeah, we are going to comply with the government because their interests are probably at that time just. If there were to be something in this and we were told to take something down and we needed to take a political stance at that point, then we might have questions. But for the most part, we're always going to err on the side of, the regulation that allows us to operate.
Okay, because that's been an issue with Twitter, right? That where people have asked to see, it's not the exact same thing, but the government has asked to see people's private messages inside of Twitter, and I think hasn't Twitter refused to do that at times, and other times they have. I guess I don't have the research on that, but so you're saying as long as it was the government did approach you, that's something you think the Dwolla would do?
Yeah, I guess I'm
not trying to.
It's a good question, and it's something that probably needs to be addressed, probably proactively. But right now, the way we think is in the best interest of the consumers, and on that behalf, we're going to listen to the government. The regulations that surround us right now are very defined, in a sense, and you never know, maybe a situation will come up that is outside those legal boundaries, and maybe somebody will try to make more legislation to define that stuff, good for better or worse. But those are conversations I think we'll probably have individually as they arrive.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. If anybody in the chat room has ever had that with their company where the government has instructed you to do something with a user, I think I'd like to hear that story too. I think that's really interesting. I know that the stories with Twitter and gets more news when that happens. But if any local companies have, it'd be really interesting to see.
Well, even to comment on Twitter, was that with Occupy Wall Street and the riots, or from a national standpoint, has the government ever intervened with Twitter?
That was a couple years ago.
I know
internationally.
I know internationally.
There have been questions.
There's been a lot of questions.
Didn't the State Department ask Twitter to do a bunch of stuff during like the Egyptian or Tunisian riots?
Yeah,
could be.
Well, and that's actually a interesting observation if you think about it.
WikiLeaks is where they.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be.
That's a great example.
Yep.
But I guess in my head, that's a great example of how a technology can become so ubiquitous that the government is at the will of a startup. They're asking for questions because they recognize that the technology you possess and how you connect people is a powerful thing. And then it's like, so who governs that? Is it the right of the startup? Is it the right of the government? Is that where does the interest lie? Who's going to play God on these moral issues? I don't know.
Well, obviously, you take the moral ground and you say what you as a company
but
believe.
Morals and values are
right, but you can
relative.
go to jail if you don't comply with what the law says you have to do. So it's an individual choice on behalf of the company, which way they want to take it. So
yeah,
journalists deal with that all the time, right?
Yes,
Traffic
absolutely.
sources or not. It's just how does that roll out into different fields.
Yeah.
So that would be an interesting one. We can talk more about that on a future show maybe if that comes up. And I'd be curious if you guys. That's something you can check on and see. Very good. Speaking of things with Dwolla, let's talk about the other story. On Friday, betabeat.com ran a story citing multiple, yet unnamed sources that the New York City-based venture fund Union Square Ventures is leading a $10 million Series B investment round into your company. Union Square Ventures, who backs companies like Foursquare, Twitter, Etsy, Tumblr, Kickstarter, and others, is obviously, I think, one of the most successful funds that you hear about very often. As far as I can tell, they've never made an investment in an Iowa company to date. So it's really an interesting question. First of all, Jordan, can you tell us if this is true? Let's put it that way.
I think the interesting thing here about it is one of the unique values that I was really good at, and I think really kind of differentiates us quite a bit, is the fact that we can stay head down. I think Friday for us was a dose of reality when it comes to how people perceive the tech in the West and the East side. But for us, it's always been about staying heads down, focusing on building this project and this project and this project and this project. So Friday for us was, a huge distraction. And we're not going to sit here and lambast on it. Our policy is we're not going to comment on anything. And we're not going to release anything. Because this ultimately is a distraction for us, and it's not really something that we're used to. We've found success in this kind of pattern, and if we come out and we start making a precedent of commenting on these sort of things, then we kind of become, at mercy of the rumor wheel. For better or for worse, we're going to do what we've always done, and that's just kind of stay heads down on these things.
So you say you're not going to comment on things, you're not going to comment on rumors. That's kind of what these things would be, rumors that you're talking about.
Anything that deals with us from an operational standpoint, that's something that I think we're going to weigh very heavily and come up with the right decision. And so whether it be weeks, days, months, if we disclose at all, there's going to be a proper reason for that.
And that's interesting. Yeah, didn't expect you necessarily to come on and confirm or deny one way or the other.
Well,
So
in my head, it was, if I kind of pull out, then everyone's going to be like, and for us, look, this show represents a really big part of our community, especially our initial community, and you guys know that if we were going to take a stance and we were going to talk about something, you guys of course would be the first to know. We just really got to be conscientious about how we go about releasing things like this. For better or worse, these rumors are distractions, and
right.
It's kind of part of our value set is just to stay heads down and keep working.
I think that's fair. And just so everybody knows, Jordan's in a tough spot with this because you were scheduled to come on the show, didn't know about this rumor's going to break on Friday. Good for us. We're glad to have you. I want to talk about this story and have you on for sure. But what I've heard you say is neither denial kind of confirmation of that. So we can kind of leave that piece at that. I mean, I don't need you to kind of have this.
I think the thing to leave it here with this is, like I said, we got to really. It was a learning experience for us. It's flattering at the same time. It's something that we gotta anticipate future, because at the end of the day, this website, Betaby, in its byline, essentially claims itself as a gossip and news generator for Silicon Alley 2.0. So you got to take all these things with a grain of salt. And as a former journalist, not a former journalist, I was never a journalist, but I journalism school, so I kind of got indoctrined with some of the journalistic principles. Going to market with a story with unfounded sources and that sort of thing, if that's your prerogative, if that's how you do things, then cool. I wouldn't be able to sleep very well at night, but she's got to live up to her job and her duties. I know a lot of people would be upset and that sort of thing, and have been upset. A lot of entrepreneurs have taken a very proactive FU stance when these situations happen, but for us, we're just
it's
going back to work.
And that makes sense. It's a little bit, though, victim of your own success. And I mentioned this to you earlier. Like, you guys have been really good about getting the word out nationally, and Dwolla is one of the most talked about names, for sure here. But, like, I think nationally, Dwolla is, Ben's on the 30 under 30, whatever that list is from Forrest.
Yeah, 30 under 30.
All those types of things. So when you get the word out, you don't always get a chance to say, like, whether saying this is a correct story or not, like, you're going to have stories that aren't ones that you can control. That's going to happen, I think. What do you guys think about this story and kind of what Jordan's saying here?
Not a bad problem to have.
No, it's really not.
Obviously speaking from an outsider, but
might distract you a little bit,
right.
Sure. Keep your head down, but guys like us can get excited about it.
What's a day like at Dwolla's office when this story breaks and you're like...
Well, I mean, it's never happened to us before. I mean,
okay, what was Friday
never had a
like
reason
at
to happen before. Well, it was actually, to give you a little back end of that story, I was talking to her. We had gone like 4 or 5 emails deep, and her last email was like, oh, by the way, there's a rumor that this is happening. I'm posting a story about it right now. I was
so you did get a 30-second heads up as she hit the publish button?
No, she gave me about an hour, and she was like mentioning names and stuff, names of like, Fred, and I sent over an email to Fred, and I was like, well, that'd be kind of cool if I could do that. Just have his email address. But, you really can't, you're kind of starting to see some of how this could be a potential distraction. For us right now, there's a lot of things on our plate, a lot of projects. You guys have been down in the office, and when you walk in there, it's just crickets, right? So for us to kind of all of a sudden get an increase or influx in calls, tweets, emails, more phone calls, more emails, canceling meetings, things that we just don't need right now, it can get a little frustrating. So, and yeah, it was a little frustrating, but if anything, it also was a sense of, holy shit.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of people waiting for an announcement like this. So if you see a rumor like that, it makes sense that it might feel like there's some truth to it, because you guys have been raising. I mean, Ben's very open about checking in at different venture capitalists when he's traveling. So I mean, it appears to be setting up from circumstantial evidence. Like,
but from that being
coming.
said, anybody, I think.
Well, the Business Insider article we talked about, which was not intended to be an article.
And that's a funny thing about media relations as it is. But really, when you start thinking about it, you don't want to raise money when you have no money. It gives a really powerful bargaining chip away.
Right.
Being very proactive and creating those relationships now, Ben's always been very prescient in knowing that that's an important aspect of the long-term success of Dwolla. So, having those kind of conversations are important. And I don't think we've ever, like you said, Ben's been very vocal about saying that we're entertaining all these conversations. But at the end of the day, you really do have to be proactive in these things. You don't want to face this sort of situation where your equity is diluted and you lose bargaining power, you lose control of the company. These are things that we have to be very conscientious about moving forward, and luckily we have a great team of advisors and things like that. So,
let's we're going to continue to talk about this, and you can talk about which pieces you feel comfortable with. But I want to ask these guys maybe, because I would imagine this is not something you're going to ask. Like, what do you think this could mean for Dwolla if this is true?
For Dwolla?
For Dwolla, yeah.
It's huge. I mean, so you mentioned at the outset, Twitter, well, Twitter, there's a major conflict there in Square, being Jack Dorsey who runs Twitter, that, there's probably not an integration there. But what immediately came to my mind was, I walk into Amici, they know because I check in on Foursquare, and when I go up to pay, instead of having to go through the process, they just send me a push notification. You want to pay, yes, approve, because Dwolla is integrated into Foursquare. Sweet. Etsy, my wife uses the hell out of it, 3.5% transaction fee. That pretty much goes away because most of that's credit cards. So they can even charge a percent and make good money.
Right now, are you? You can't use.
Okay, so those are
not right now.
Yeah.
Those are portfolio companies of Union Square Ventures. Zynga, 60 million daily users use that. I don't know how many of those, maybe 600,000 of them pay for fake buildings and cows.
Purple cows.
Purple cows and whatnot. I don't know what they pay for because I remember you used it. But integrating with those platforms raises huge amounts of awareness. It lowers the cost of doing business for those companies. And you have Union Square owning 5.5% of Zynga, undisclosed amounts of Etsy and Foursquare, but pretty high numbers because they were in at the beginning. So,
and venture capital is not your business, but you're in the investment world. Right. So, is that typical? One fund, do they try to integrate portfolio companies? I would think they would. I think it'd make a ton of sense. Does that happen?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and especially Union Square. In my experience, they're trying to do, from what I can see, they're trying to find synergies all over the place. Plus, you have Fred Wilson, right? So he has 200,000 Twitter followers. He has 114,000 people following his RSS feed. He's got 10,000 daily hits to his blog, even if he doesn't post. And pretty amazing guy to get the awareness out. And Dwolla, it will be a slam dunk, in my opinion, if you have a guy like that behind it, because the awareness just skyrockets overnight.
Yeah,
it's not hard to open an account, right? And somebody finds it, figures out a way to use it, integrate it with a Foursquare. I think that's phenomenal for point of sale.
Yeah, and I think that point of integration is important. Jordan, we'll ask you a question. It seems like you guys aren't spending as much time on integrating into other platforms anymore. I think the last one I remember was Shopify, November-ish maybe, when Dwolla became a payment option in Shopify. It feels like you guys are spending more time integrating with banks and the Fising products and different products you're developing. Is that a change in the company's course? And I know that you guys have switched from, originally web merchants was kind of the area, and then mobile became the focus, but having Dwolla as a payment option inside of things like Etsy, I'm not an Etsy user, but if I was an Etsy user, being able to pay for it inside Dwolla makes me use Dwolla a lot more often. I'm just curious, are you guys focusing on that right now?
For us, look, we've always said that there's pretty much four main markets that we're kind of trying to go after, right? Your merchants, consumers, developers, and of course financial institutions. Those are kind of our bread and butter, if you will. And that's always grown really organically. Sometimes the consumer end will go by leaps and bounds, and then the bank end will, and then the developer end will. Right now what we're really trying to do is bolster all of them, really kind of take a step back and say, how can we start focusing on the products and the integrations, or improvements, I should say, to really kind of launch ourselves off for 2012. Because 2012 is a really, really big year for us in terms of integrations with shopping carts. What we've seen is a lot of proactive developers in the community take it upon themselves to build the plugins, to build the, the things that they need to do to be able to provide that tool to the Shopify community or the open source cart communities, those sort of things. And then providing them ways to reward themselves for doing that with the facilitator fee. And so when all is said and done, I think you'll see maybe kind of hopefully a cohesive story that makes sense. But for right now, I think our emphasis is really building out the product a little bit more to where it should be right now.
And in cases like Etsy, it would be more like they're waiting for Etsy to integrate them. It's not like they can go in and just integrate themselves into Etsy without their engineering team doing all the work for them.
And that's the thing, is that there is this perception out there that it's just hey, FreshBooks, will you?
Right.
You want to hook up? You want to go date? We'll go.
It's got to be
integration, baby.
It does have to be two-sided, though, right?
It really does.
You have to get FreshBooks as excited in that as.
Right. And a lot of the early integrations were a lot of the open source systems where I could write a WordPress plugin and give it out.
Yeah, this guy knows a lot more about that stuff.
Whole different game than actually trying to convince Etsy to use your platform as a payment option.
Oh yeah, from the outside of that portfolio, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, but
no question.
but still an important part of being able to really turn Dwolla
definitely.
into a payment option you can use anywhere that you want it. I mean,
Yeah, and
those are big things.
there's a courtship. There's a certain amount of talks, and a lot of these talks, are going on and probably on really, really early stages. But we're just kind of filling each other out, and before we kind of ask each other if we want to go to Pizza Hut.
Yeah, and your fraud rates now are really low.
Is that where
but
you
imagine
took
if you had
bids?
integration with those services.
Yeah.
And you have their back end data stuff that they don't give everybody. Your fraud goes even way down the scale. So there's major implications, I think, on both usage and on keeping fraud down, because you'll have that rich data. Assuming that a Fred Wilson could get you that access, which I think is pretty much a slam dunk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, inside the network. If they
Yeah.
Union Square event. Or
right.
we're talking about Fred Wilson, but if this is not true and it's somebody else that eventually, I mean, I think they all have
Absolutely.
portfolios that you could do that. So, did you have other thoughts on that, Andy?
And I have one piece at the sort of the end of that, right? That Fred has posted that he doesn't like to come in on B and C rounds. So he doesn't. In other words, he doesn't follow very well. Is kind of what the post says. And so, and I get it. He wants control. He wants to have access to later rounds at higher ownership percentages. He wants to be able to control the culture from the outset, and he wouldn't be able to do that necessarily in this case.
He likes to drive product too.
Right. Unless he had, cohesive group of people whose culture he believed in. I mean, that would be my only counterpoint to
why it may be false.
Why it may be
It's
false.
not his typical deal, what we know of it.
Maybe. At least in terms of preference. I haven't really checked that against what he's actually done. But.
No, that's good information. If he does come in or whoever, question for you guys now, not what does it mean for Dwolla, but what does it mean for Des Moines to have a Union Square venture-backed company in it? What do you think can happen? Does this kick off a series of other investments? If you're going to fly from New York to Des Moines for board meetings, are you going to start, make a trip of it, or are you flying in and out? What do you think that means for our city, or for the whole region, really?
Well, it's huge. I mean, it says, wow, you've picked this company out of Des Moines. Look what they're doing. Look what you've done with them. Say it's even after a year. Well, let's go back there and hunt.
I think it puts a lot of pressure on the VCs that are already in this area.
That's a good point.
They're not gonna, why would they take the risk of losing out on a Dwolla and let someone from the coast take it and take that away from them when they could just jump on it way earlier than them?
I think they'll be more aggressive.
I think so. I think you'll see the ones that do exist get a little bit more risky, take some risks early on rather than waiting for startups to get poached. Because I know I wouldn't imagine Dwolla would leave, but there's been instances where outside investment comes in, company goes.
Right.
I think that happens all the time, especially from Midwestern states. I think even you see companies in Boulder, and I remember who it was, Simple Geo, I think, moved from Boulder to Silicon Valley after they got investment. That stuff happens a lot. And in the Newsmakers interview I did with Ben, I think he said in that operations, regardless, would always stay in Des Moines just because it's really cheap and they're committed to the community. It wouldn't make any sense ever to move that, but that there may be other facets of Dwolla in the future that would be somewhere else, like business development, if it made sense. So take him at his word for that, for sure. And and Jordan wasn't in that interview, so you couldn't control.
No, but I mean, it's not something that we haven't ever talked about.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think it was really important, not even just from an operational standpoint or it being cheaper to live here. Granted, square foot space in the Midland is 1/100th of what it is anywhere else, like in New York and stuff. But the fact of the matter is that it's deeply ingrained into who we are and the products that we put out. And if Dwolla were to move, I think it would be essentially him making a statement or their perception would be there that he is changing the course away from that, and I don't think he'd be ever comfortable doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's been so vocal himself, which has been great for the community and for the Silicon Prairie as a region, but to make that step would be, that'd be a tough day, I think, for all of us. I lived in Indianapolis when Formspring started. I never knew those guys or anything, but it was always the up-and-coming tech company when I lived there, and then when they first got their investment, they were out to Silicon Valley right away, and that was a big deal just around kind of the community. And there's bigger tech companies in Indianapolis too, like the Exact Target type guys, but they were the startup, kind of they were the exciting tech company that was going on when I lived there, and then they left, and that was I think they left earlier than Dwolla stage now, as far as like what they meant to the community. But
we just bought a house, so if we're moving, my wife is going to be very upset, but we're not. So
and I would I don't think anything I don't see that happening necessarily, but it's always you never know.
You never
I think
know.
Ben has said, I think he said in that Newsmakers interview too, that if the money required Dwolla to move, they would look for other money. There's enough offers on the table that or interest at least that they can stay.
Well, it depends on who it is too. I mean, if you have Fred saying come to New York, then that changes things. Or is Mark Andreessen or someone like that.
When it happens, make them move it via Dwolla to you.
Yeah,
I think
No
that's
checks. We don't take checks.
But I think the thing here.
he's not going to acknowledge that.
Well, I'm sorry. I was kind of going off of a thought that I just kind of.
And then, can you see that? Fred says, "I just paid with Dwolla."
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think. I really do think, though, the thing here with this is a lot of people on the outside appreciate the fact, not VCs with notwithstanding, but like people really do like the fact that we are from Iowa and that we do have the benefit of staying away from the distractions and that we do kind of have this skill set or this value set. And I would be hesitant to think that somebody would really want to take that away from us anyways. Especially with the wealth of knowledge that we have in the financial industry that, here being a stone's throw away from Omaha, Des Moines being an insurance capital and financial powerhouse in the Midwest. And I couldn't see a real benefit other than kind of maybe some of the business development stuff being on the coast.
yeah, that makes sense.
But and I think it's different too than looking at other venture-backed companies in the region. Like I don't know that so Smarty Pig has investments from McCombs Partners, McCombs Enterprise, whatever the name of the fund is, out of Texas, Red McCombs Group. As far as I know, when I looked at their portfolio list today, there's no other regional companies, so that didn't move the needle here as far as really anything other than that Smarty Pig was kind of at the top of this kind of interest bubble in tech startups. So we haven't seen that with them. Take somebody like Zarly, who is national in their offices now. I've always called them a Kansas City company, but I don't know that they ever embrace that. I mean, they have an office there, Bo lives there, but they've always said San Francisco in their press releases. They've always done that type of thing. So if Zarly were to ever leave and not have a Kansas City office anymore, and counting the people on their Twitter page, their list of there's not that many. At one point there was 15 or 20. I feel like maybe there's a handful in Kansas City now. But I don't think that's as they're not as integrated to Kansas City as I think Dwolla is to Des Moines. And their investment is from everywhere, so it doesn't surprise.
Well, and they were founded in LA on the LA startup weekend, So
they were, but they're not in LA either, right?
But they have the Kaufman Foundation, and I think that would be. I wouldn't even draw the equation that it'd be like the Kaufman Foundation. Even that would be. Huge, but I mean,
and I don't think that. I mean, Mr. Kaufman was Mr. Kansas City, so they play baseball in Kauffman Stadium and all that. So, I don't think that would happen. But I just mean Zarly itself, as we always looked at it as a very Silicon Prairie company. I don't think Zarly ever acted as a very Silicon Prairie company. They were always kind of focused on the coast, New York,
Sure.
San Francisco. Even though Bo lives in Kansas City, and so they have tie to here. They're just not. They didn't ever wave the flag of we are Kansas City's tech company, and this is important to us to be Kansas City's tech company in the way that Dwolla has said Des Moines is important to who we are. What you just said, it's in your fiber.
Exactly.
Zarly's never done that with Kansas City, to my knowledge.
Yeah, so that was my. I posted. I think it was on Facebook on one of your posts. I think it was on Friday. Wherever Dwolla goes, they're going to be wearing, a Des Moines letter jacket, for lack of a better way to put it. They're always going to have that embroidered, tattooed, whatever, if they're shirtless.
Letter jacket at the Pizza Hut on the date.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jordan's taking.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good.
Gonna go see the Notebook afterwards.
Getting a picture of soda.
Nice. All right. One other thing, Jordan. The rumor tweets on Friday.
Yeah, that was our way, I guess, or maybe it was my way of at least coming out and making a definitive statement, and having some fun with the situation. When those things kind of do happen, you sit back and you really don't know what to make of it. So for me, it was just kind of a nice way to.
You were, for those who didn't follow, you were tweeting to the IMDb page for Rumor Has It and
hey, I really like Jenna France.
That was it felt a little bit to me like maybe you guys were going out of your way to be like, no, this isn't true. Which
it was frustrating for us because then all of a sudden people that we actually really do care about, people that we would probably reach out proactively and talk about, either through you guys or through our blog or maybe even a personal email, were coming out and saying, "Oh, congratulations!" And we were just like, there was a sting to it, when you lose something like that. Rumor or no rumor, a fundraising, I think, is a very personal experience for a company, and I guess maybe we handled that in the best way we knew how, and that was a little bit of humor.
Personally, it to me felt a little over the top, but that's just my opinion too. So, but I'm not the one raising the fund. So you guys do what you want to do, obviously. So let's move on. Anything else on that anybody wants to share? No?
Good.
All right. We do want to give today's sponsor, Delta Dental of Iowa, another word of thanks. When it comes to taking care of your smile, rely on a company you can trust. Fact is, more Iowans trust their smiles to Delta Dental. Whether you're looking for a dental policy for you, your family, or your startup, visit deltadentalia.com to learn more about your many plan options. Thanks again for your support of entrepreneurs in this state. We've discussed adding the Delta Dental Smile Cam from the basketball games to PrairieCast. Haven't done that yet, but you might see that in the future.
I think that'll get the green light.
All right, are you guys ready for the new segments?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, first new segment. This is the idea. We're calling this the Fast Four, and I think we may even have some graphics that go with this, or maybe not. We were kind of playing with that before the show. So the Fast Four starts now, and here's how it works. I'm going to cover 4 topics. I will introduce the topic, end with a question, give each of you a chance to answer the question. I will consider what each of you said, and then I will say who the is.
So this is kind of like the around the horn thing?
A little bit, yeah.
Governing by fiat.
All right, and since I have the Google Doc, I get to determine whether you're right or not, and the order we're going. So the first one.
This is predetermined.
Lincoln, Nebraska-based Hudl had clients that won 4 different collegiate national titles this year. And I won't even say what they are. They had 4. That's pretty impressive. So this is the question. Is that because their software is that good, or is it that they had 4 that won, or is it because they just have so many darn clients that they won? Which is it? Jordan.
Me first. Okay. There's a great commercial out there.
Fast 4.
Okay, sorry. No, honestly, I think a lot of it is going to be in part of the athletes showing up in the game day preparation they have, whether that be physical strength training, knowing the playbook and the general strategy. Of course, Hudl comes into play with that, and I think has kind of helped them achieve that. But when it comes to game days, national championship, I'm sorry, it's you show up to play or you don't win the gold.
That was not one of the answers. So it sounds like software. It's because their software is that good. Your
Number of clients, because it didn't help the Cyclones or Huskers win their bowl games.
Oh, it's a multiple. Oh.
It's an either or. Yeah.
Never mind.
All right. So software, number of clients.
It's software. I have absolutely no sports knowledge to bring to bear on this, so I'm going to go with the software.
And you went to Creighton, which doesn't even have a football team.
You got it.
Yeah.
We're undefeated.
Yeah. Fair enough. I think you're right. I think it is Hudl software. That is the reason. So that is the
Well,
one.
how come the Cyclones didn't win?
Because Cyclones are a new
Correlation doesn't prove
they haven't
causation.
started using Hudl
Cyclones
yet.
are a new client, so they will win their bowl game next year.
Nice.
According to this is number 2. According to the Des Moines Register, State Senator Jack Hatch has proposed legislation in Iowa to give unemployment benefits to people starting businesses. Is this a good idea? Yes or no?
Yes.
So basically, you do start up and you get unemployment benefits as if you were just out of work.
Depending on the scope, yes.
No, I'd rather see them lower tax rate than raise taxes by giving out more stuff like this.
More stuff like this. All right, Sayer?
I'm with Andy. Who pays for it? Does this come out of the general fund? Is it the former employer that pays? There's a lot of unintended consequences that come out of that. If you leave an employer and start your own business, they're essentially funding that. Their taxes go up, their costs go up, and it punishes them, and it just doesn't make any sense because you're benefiting current, potential new business at the expense of an existing operating entity. Right?
So your answer is no?
No.
Your answer is no. Are you revisiting your answer?
Yes, but I guess my thing is the parameters around this. Do we say yes or no, A or B, and then kind of explain, or we just leave it?
You can explain.
Oh, well.
Fast.
All right, we'll work on this better for next week. But I think the answer is yes, this is a good idea. I think that's what wins because I think that people do this all the time anyway, and I think this is just more truth in the way that we do the process.
I think it really comes back down to how it's structured. I mean, at face value, there could be both arguments for and against.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And I have not
It's
seen the legislation
structured
for this. This came out just at the end of last week. It was in the register and was kind of going around on Twitter. So we'll see what it looks like. You can check that online. All right, next. According to Business380.com, which is part of the Gazette properties in Cedar Rapids, the Secretary of State in Iowa, Schultz, has proposed a Start a Business Month for February where there are no fees to file to try to encourage new businesses. Will this be successful, yes or no? Let's go this way.
I don't think that those fees are that high. It really won't make that much difference. It might make somebody who's on the fence jump over. So I think in that sense, it's a good idea.
So yes. Good
So
idea.
yes.
Andy?
No.
No?
No. I think if you can't find $50 to incorporate your startup, you're in the wrong game.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I gotta agree. I mean, no is there's other ways to really kind of entice or incentivize somebody really taking a chance.
The answer is no. I don't think it's going to be impactful. I like that the Secretary of State is
The answer
thinking
is
about
no.
these things, but I don't think that this particular execution is the right one. All right, fourth one. Ben Milne, your boss, blogged last week and said that angel tax credits really aren't all that great, that he didn't see them being impactful. The state of Iowa did fund new angel tax credits last year. I believe the state of Nebraska did the same. Missouri is looking at it this year. The state of Kansas just cut them out, so they're not doing them anymore. Who is right?
Oh, it's back over here?
Yeah, we'll go this way.
I was trying to take a deep breath and kind of collect my thoughts.
Fast forward. We're going fast.
Okay, so I think that tax credits are a good idea for angels, but I think Ben was exactly right. They're not going to make or break a deal, and if they do, that's dumb money.
Fair enough.
I would say you should be investing here because you like the product of the founder, not because there's a tax credit. But the tax credit could be a bonus, so I'm with Ben.
Okay.
It's
Angel tax credits are not
no.
worth it. Okay.
Well, yes, I do. I think tax credits are definitely an incentive. I agree with Ben on its base level. Of course, we don't want somebody coming here for that reason, but at the same time, the added bonus is something I think that really does at least give us a secondary pass over, at least initially.
So you think they are a bad idea, like they aren't worth it?
No, I think they are worth it.
You think they are worth it? I think
Yeah,
Ben says they're not.
I know, and I know that,
Yeah,
but I
okay.
do agree with Ben saying
I got
his
you.
point isn't so much saying that they're bad or good. His point is saying that's not the reason why somebody should invest here.
Yeah.
And let's focus on the other reasons why somebody would want to invest here, and then let's develop those programs. But I don't think he was saying they're really good or they're really bad.
I see the point. I think that angel tax credits are necessary in Iowa because you don't want to be the one state that doesn't have them. So Kansas has dropped them. I think that's going to hurt them because that money could easily
Now, are they
go
depending on
somewhere else.
the gigabit stuff with Google and the fiber and that sort of thing? Is that their...
To spur angel investment?
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe.
that's... maybe that's one of the,
Well, maybe they are, but the state of Missouri is now looking at adding them in, which is also part of the Google fiber in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
Did you have further thoughts there?
I really didn't. No.
All right. Well, that is the Fast Four. I don't have a winner overall because I couldn't keep track of who
I didn't
more right
keep
or
track
wrong.
either.
So
I'll take it.
Andy is the
Andy
winner.
won.
this
Andy
week.
wins.
You know, when you see this on TV, they have a little like
Yeah, there's a
ding,
little thing.
then little we need to work
Get on that,
That's
John.
coming.
We just
So-
need like a trigger button.
We do.
Yeah.
All right, so that is it for the Fast Four. We'd love to hear what you think about that segment. Trying to kind of speed up the show a little bit, have some fun. If we will continue to do that, feel free to put that in the chat room or leave that as a comment on the post if you're watching this later. So I want to wrap with the second new feature. This is Andy's Stat of the Week. Do you want to tell us how this is going to work?
I will be looking for fun facts and stats from across Silicon Prairie each week to share. And this week's Stat of the Week is $340,000, which is the amount of incentive money that T8 Webware has received from the state of Iowa and city of Des Moines to move an office to Des Moines, possibly in the Midland building.
Wow.
The Register, I think, kind of picked up this story first last week. IDEA had passed this $340,000 in incentives. I think $20,000 of that is from the city, right? There's something like that.
Yeah, a fraction of those from the city.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great for those guys. I would not have thought to go after something like this, but yeah, 23 jobs they're targeting and then putting an office down here. They already have eight employees,
people
I
here,
think,
yeah.
working at Startup City, just because they need a bigger talent pool and it's here. So that's awesome that they're opening that office here, not in Minneapolis or Chicago
Right.
or LA or something like that. But that number surprised the heck out of me when I saw what they were doing.
Yeah. Those are big numbers. I mean,
Yeah.
how many employees do they say they bring in?
23.
23.
23.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope it's in this building because I'd love to have those guys around here.
Yep,
Um,
and some of it's going to office space, some of it's going to training.
Yeah, I don't think it's a check for $340,000.
No, it's not like,
or
here,
a
come to Des
Dwolla
Moines.
transaction for $340,000. But no, that's
23 employees, 350,000, 348,000. Wow. That's
340,
really
yeah.
significant.
any thoughts, Jordan? Stat of the week.
Yeah. I look at it from knowing T8 Webware from their home up in Cedar Falls and that sort of thing, and obviously a really, really ambitious company that have are operating in an industry that we all know needs to be disrupted. So kudos to those guys. I'm big fans of what they do, and actually I have a lot of good friends that work there too as well. So I'm excited for them.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for today's show. Thank everybody for joining us online. Delta Dental again for sponsoring. Sayer, where should folks go to learn more about you online?
SayerM.com.
Jordan?
JS Lampe on Twitter.
Andy?
HumanAndy.com.
Find more about me at gwood.me. PrairieCast is produced by John Thompson of Evolve. To find out more about his services, go to dmevolve.com. For more on the show, you can check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/PrairieCast. And for all the news and culture related to startups on the Silicon Prairie, go to siliconprairienews.com. I changed that up.
Nice
I
job.
like that.
Yeah. We'll see you all right back here next week. Thanks, everyone.